any of you. It's merely a day to say thank you. Full of our mission is about gratitude and compassion. And that's what we're here today, to pour it into you guys. I was inspired by a friend of mine, Mark Cummins, who's one of you. And he told me a statistic that really hit me sort of like hitting me. He said that of 10 people that go into the line of work of being a spiritual leader or a pastor, 2 people retire with that mission. So it became very evident that we needed to pour ourselves into those people. Not unlike what you guys do, serving people, that's what we do. I'm a horse guy by trade. I have done horses for many, many years of my life. And in the end of 2017, I watched one of my dear friends go through a tough situation with death. His girlfriend went from hospital to hospice, and then the funeral home. It was, he and his children and her children lived in my home at the time. It was a very intimate experience of it. I ended up in the funeral home with him, and it was deplorable. It was just salesmanship. They were trying to sell people things, and I have a hotel background from the hotel school at Cornell, and I said, we can do this better. So I asked Terry Roberts at the time. I didn't know that he was ill and dying. I said, if you ever want to sell that business, I think I could be pretty good at it. And he called me 2 years later and said, hey, are you interested in that business? I would sell it. We sold the business to a public company, which is what happened in our business 15 years ago. I would say that most of the best family-owned and operated firms got sold to big public companies, and then compassion and service turned into numbers, and that's not what we did. So we set out on a different path to grow a team of people to deliver excellence to families in the time of need. The good news is we get to partner with y'all. We see you in the hallways, and so today the purpose is merely just to pour back into you and say how grateful we are to get to work with you, serving families. With that said, I'm going to turn the microphone over to my dear friend Mark Cummins and have him say some words a little bit about our speaker today. He relates to you guys because he is one of them.
So just in just a moment, Jeff's going to come and talk to us. There are a lot of things that Jeff Henderson has done in his life that are very successful. We talk about being a business executive, starting churches, as an author, successful businessman, husband, dad. But I think what we're about to experience first is this. He literally is one of us, those of us in the spiritual space. Or in the caring for other people's space. And that would be chief. I mean, you're much of a caregiver as the rest of us as pastors as you lean in, right? When people are hurting and they're vulnerable, and you help build a bridge of hope. But Jeff caught my attention some time back in somewhat of a taking my breath away moment. Because I heard him say this publicly. He said, it's kind of a tragedy that churches, pastors, are known most for what they're against. It just hit me hard. See, in our whole world right now, everybody talks and promotes about what they're against. And Jeff challenged us that day, let's flip the script. Let's be known for what we're for. And so the book that, again, thank you, Chester and Roberts, that's at your chair as a gift for you. This book will help you wrestle with 2 questions. Number 1, what do you want to be known for? Right? Everybody wants to be known for something. But then probably the more challenging question is, what do the people in our community say that we're for? And so he's going to come and talk. When I say he's one of us, his dad is a pastor, so he's a PK. So he's seen the underbelly of all the church life as a kid. Then he made a decision in Atlanta as a businessman that he would step out of the corporate world and lean in and serve and help starting a church. So he knows what it is to be a church planter and to lead a church staff. But then his grown kids are pastors serving in a church. He'll actually be speaking at their church in the next couple of weeks. So at all levels, he really understands where we are, what we feel, the ups and downs. He understands what this time of the season is, all the different things. So would you put your hands together and let Jeff Henderson know Ocala, Florida is for Jeff Henderson.
It's an honor for me to be here. As Mark said and Chester said, I have a heart for what you're doing. And we not only have pastors, we have some business leaders here, some nonprofit leaders, so I'm so grateful. And here's what we're hoping for you, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to hopefully encourage you, hopefully thank you, and this may be the most exciting thing that you're here for. We're going to feed you. Okay, so hang with me, all right? Hang with me. But that's my goal. I want you to walk away encouraged and inspired. I'm going to share some lessons that I've learned, and here's why I wanted to share this. This year was a big year for me because my birthday had one of those zeros attached to it. Ever had one of those zeros attached to your age? And anytime I have I'm not going to tell you which one, but anytime I have one of those zeros attached to my age, I get more reflective. And here's what I've experienced, and this is true for you as well. We've been around some incredible leaders, and I think it's helpful for us to kind of pause and reflect back. What are some lessons that we've observed over our lives that we want to not only just observe, we want to learn? So I'm going to share that with you a little bit today. But Mark alluded to this. I grew up, I'm a preacher's kid, and let me tell you my earliest memories of church world. We would come home, and we would live in this little house, and my parents would make coffee. We would go to church. You know, as a preacher's kid, you go to church. How many times did you go to church a week? You go 3, right? Somebody said a lot. That's true. That's true. Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, right? So we would come home on Sunday night, and my brothers and sister and I would watch Walt Disney World. I remember that TV show. Yes, I'm dating myself, right? So, and my parents would make coffee and they would talk about today's events. And I would, often hear my father say, well, brother so-and-so is mad about this. Deacon so-and-so is mad about that. I got to go have conversations with Deacon so-and-so. He's really mad about that. And I had this, my first initial thought of the local church was, I'm not saying this is good, I'm just telling you this is my experience. Why do these people hate my parents? And so I made a decision, little did I know at that point, I made a decision I will never, ever, ever work at a church. I told God, I will never, ever work at a church. So I worked at a church for 18 years. If you don't get anything out of what I say today, here, you might want to write this down. Never tell God you're never going to do something. I think the Lord pays a little closer attention. I think that's in Leviticus somewhere. And I recently told God, I'm never going to be a billionaire. I'm going to see how he handles that. So I didn't know, I enjoyed sports. I grew up in the Atlanta area. We've not had a whole lot to cheer for in the Atlanta area for professional sports. We've actually built more stadiums and we've won championships in the city of Atlanta. So I didn't know that you could do sports marketing. And so I really fell in love with that. So that was my career path. I started working for the Braves. I did sports marketing for them, like Coca-Cola poster night, all that. And then wound up working for Chick-fil-A. Have y'all heard of Chick-fil-A before? Okay, so I managed all of their sports marketing and beverage marketing and regional marketing for Chick-fil-A. And other than the founder of the company, I'm like, I have the best job, right? Because I got to tell my wife, because a lot of our commercials ran during college football games, honey, I can't cut the grass today. I got to watch college football and see what that's about. So how did I get from Chick-fil-A to being a pastor for 18 years, and why is that important for you? And why is that going to encourage you and hopefully remind you that, hey, what you're doing is really important? Let me tell you a little bit of that story. So part of what I did is we led the sports marketing for a college football bowl game called the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. If you're a college football bowl game, the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl is one of the semifinal games. And so our team's goal was to inspire people when they came to the stadium to watch on ESPN, we had one goal for all of you fans, and that was to inspire you to do one thing: eat more chicken. That was our goal, okay? So this was in the Georgia Dome. We blew that stadium up in Atlanta a few years ago because we were convinced the Falcons just need a new stadium. That's when they'll start winning. Okay, so that hasn't happened either. So we had this Georgia Dome, and in June of that year, this is back in the year 2000, I get our team together. I'm like, okay, the game's at the end of the year. What can we do as fans come to the game to inspire them to eat more chicken? And so I sat down at this empty seat, and I noticed there was a cup holder, and I had this idea. What if at the cup holder, at every cup holder, 72,000 seats, 72,000 cup holders, 72,000 fans, we put one of these eat more chicken cows in the cup holders. Like, this is a great idea. But the problem is I didn't have money in my marketing budget to pay for 72,000 cows. But I knew someone who did have the money, and his name was Truett Cathy. And he didn't invent the chicken, but he invented the chicken sandwich, and he was the founder of Chick-fil-A. So here's a lesson for all you nonprofit leaders: if you don't have the money, go find somebody who does. Okay? And so I was so excited. I drive back down to the Chick-fil-A headquarters, go up to the 5th floor, go up to Truett's assistant. Hey, can I see Truett? She said, sure. So I knock on the door. I sit down and I pitch my idea to Truett Cathy, the founder of Chick-fil-A. Truett, imagine this: 72,000 fans. 72,000 cup holders, 72,000 cows. This would be awesome. But I don't have money in my budget to pay for it. But rumor has it that your 401k is fully funded. And so what I want you to do is I want you to write a personal check for 72,000 cows. Now, Truett was he's my business hero. He is the most generous person I've ever been around. It's not because he was generous way before all of this. But he also grew up in the Great Depression. And he was convinced that, hey, the Great Depression might be just around the corner. So he could give and hold on to the dollar really, really well. So we had a great conversation. Finally, he says, all right, Jeff, do you think we ought to do this? I said, yes, sir, I think you should. So, so I get out, this is back in the day, I get out my flip phone, and I bought 72,000 cows. I mean, I felt like a cowboy. This is awesome. Now I got to figure out, okay, how do you get 72,000 cows in the cup holders at the Georgia Dome? As my wife Wendy says, you're wow, but you're not how. You have no idea how to do these ideas that you come up with, right? By the way, how many of you would say you're wow people? Can I see your hands? Yeah, there's a few of us. How many of you would say you're how people? All right, okay. All right, you have to be really careful with this. You know what happens between wow people and how people? They get married. Okay, so you have to be really careful with that. So fast forward to the day of the game. It took us 3 days to get these cows to cup holders. It's the University of Georgia, I'm a Bulldog, versus the University of Virginia. Sold out Georgia Dome. And I'm standing at the Chick-fil-A suite area, and I'm looking at people are getting their cows, and they're showing it. Kids are showing it to their parents. College students are showing it to one another. I'm like, oh, whose idea was this? Well, this is my idea. Thank you very much. My career is on the rise. But the game begins. Virginia scores first, 7-0. They get the ball back. They score again, 14-0. They get the ball back a third time. We're not even out of the first quarter yet. They score again. It's 21-0. And the Georgia fans in the Georgia Dome are getting a little angry. So the Bulldogs get the ball. They're headed down toward their end zone, and they're about to score, but an official drops a penalty flag, effectively ending the drive. And the fans in the Georgia section absolutely lose their minds. Where were y'all when I needed you? So there's a guy in the end zone. He takes his cow and he dips it in his beverage for more velocity. And to protest the call, he throws the cow onto the field. And guess what happens next? That's right. 20,000 of his closest friends said, that's a great idea. They take their cows and they throw it onto the field. And I'm standing in the Chick-fil-A suite and I see my marketing career flash before my eyes. Now they had to delay the game to sweep all the dead little cows off of the Georgia field because that's a long flight, right? Now, the reality is I could pass the microphone around and ask you, have you ever had a bad day at work? Have you ever had a bad day at work, right? In fact, if you're here today and you've never had a bad day at work, every single day at work has been wonderful and magical. On behalf of the rest of us, we It's just hard, right? So, but even though you had a bad day at work, I bet your bad day at work was not broadcast nationally on ESPN. And rather than go to commercial break, no, we got to stay locked and loaded on this marketing disaster, to which one of the commentators said, and I quote, "Who was the marketing genius that came up with this idea?" So as a result of that, I became a pastor. And it was great, the Lord blessed and all that. So here's why I'm telling you that story. I'm standing there, and in my mind, I'm already mentally doing my resume. I'm thinking, okay, I could probably go work at Arby's. I mean, I like a beef cheddar sandwich. I could probably market that. I'm a pretty good marketing guy. My boss, David Salyers, walks up to me, and you know what he's going to say, and I don't blame him because I've just wasted the founder's money. It's going to rhyme with "you're tired," right? David comes up to me, and he puts his arm around me, and he points to everybody sweeping the dead little cows off the field. And he says something to me that is a life principle. It's one of the lessons I've observed and one of the lessons I've learned. David looks at this situation and he goes, "Jeff, there's an idea here." What are you talking about? This is a disaster. So here's the life principle. How you view life determines how you do life. How you view life determines how you do life. If I determine that this is a marketing disaster, then guess what? It is a marketing disaster. If I say, whoa, there's an idea here, guess what? There's an idea here. You have two people looking at the same situation coming to diametrically opposed conclusions. How you view your current situation is how you're going to lead through it. How you view your current circumstances are going to determine how you respond to it. So I turned to David and I said, "David, what are you talking about?" He goes, "Well, first of all, Jeff, the publicity value we're getting out of this right now is amazing. They're talking about Chick-fil-A. In fact, the next day in the newspaper, for some of our younger attendees, the newspaper is this thing that will come to your house. You can ink on your fingers. It's kind of a really odd thing. But in the sports page in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the headline was "Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl goes to the cows." That was a pretty lucrative. But he said, "Hey, what if we could do this? Think about this. What if at next year's game, when the two teams run onto the field and everybody's cheering, what if we could get the cows on the field and in the stadium in a different way?" So he and I and a few others got together at the Chick-fil-A headquarters, and here's the idea we came up with. That we were going to go, when the two teams run on the field, we're going to be at the top of the Georgia Dome. We're going to have cases and cases of Chick-fil-A cows. But this difference is that for this year, for that year's game, we're going to put parachutes on the cows. And we dropped thousands of parachuted cows onto the stadium. It was such a huge success that it's become a Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl tradition for the last 25 years. In fact, if you're a college football fan and you're going to tune in to one of the national semifinal games in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, as ESPN spans the crowd, you're going to see parachuted cows in just a few weeks. Well, I know where that idea came from. It came from what I thought was the worst day in my marketing career. Actually ended up being one of the best. And one of the reasons for that is I had a leader who was genuinely and authentically for me. 3 years after this, David Salyers came to me and said, "Hey, I'm going to this leadership conference. It's in Chicago. Would you like to go with me?" And I said, "Sure." So I went to the Global Leadership Summit and minding my own business. And it was at that summit that I walked out to the lake outside, and God said, "You're going to start a church someday." All because of that friendship that started with this, what I thought was a disaster. And then 3 years later, I would sit down with David, and he goes, "Hey, I got some good news." I said, "Well, I've got some news. He goes, "Hey, we decided to give you a massive promotion at Chick-fil-A. I'm so excited to tell you." And I'm like, "Please don't say a number." Because I'm resigning to start a church. But David Salyers is one of my best friends to this day. That was many years ago. So those are some of the lessons that I want to share with you, because the work that you're doing is worthwhile. But by the way, I know for pastors, you rarely get an email from people in your church that go, "Hey, just want to let you know everything's wonderful in our family right now. Just want to let you know we're doing great." All right. That's really the reason for my call. We are wonderful. Have a good day. All right, you don't really get that, right? So it's really, really hard. That's why I love what Chester is doing with this. I want to show you a picture that isn't just true of ministry, but maybe it's a picture that you can relate to. And I'll explain this picture a little bit. Have you ever felt like this? So let me tell you about this picture. I did not Google this picture. No one sent this to me. I took this picture. And I was having one of those days. You probably have one of those days, right? And I told my wife, Wendy, I was reaching for something, striving for something, and anytime you try to do something, you're going to have obstacles. And I said, I just need to go for a walk. And I came across this guy. And I bent down and I said, buddy, I know exactly how you feel. I don't know if you've ever had a conversation with a turtle before, or how you're introverted. I don't know if you can see this or not, but there's a curve up here. From what I could tell, the turtle, first of all, had made it all the way to the road, across the other side of the road. That's a huge accomplishment in and of itself. What I could tell, though, is that he was trying to get to that curve, and got to some level of the curve and fell over back, right? Many times when we're doing this, we think we're doing something wrong. I just want to let you know, if you're doing this, you're actually doing something right. But what you need is to have somebody to come and to pick you up and to get you to the other side. You can't do this alone, which is another reason why this lunch is so vitally important. Okay? So if there is a verse to leave you with today, I'm going to tell you about that in just a second. But the one thing I want you to remind you of, pastors, you know this, you preach about this, but sometimes you need somebody to remind you. You're in spiritual warfare. And here's what you're doing. You're pushing against darkness, and darkness will push back. Darkness will push back. The enemy will push back. This is why moments like this, days like this, you need to be encouraged. And you need people to say thank you for what you're doing. You need people to go, I don't necessarily know you, but I know the work that you do, and I know how hard it is. But as a friend of mine said, we didn't sign up for easy. We signed up for worthwhile. Now, some of you stopped listening to me, and here's why you stopped listening to me. Because you're asking the question, Jeff, what happened to the turtle? Okay, so I'm going to show you what happened to the turtle. So I picked him up and put him on higher ground. He's out speaking at turtle conferences now. That's awesome. But my hope is here's part of the goal, is if you felt like the left side, we hope you walk away feeling on the right side. Keep moving forward. Amen. Keep moving forward. Amen. Even if it's just one step at a time. Keep moving forward. If you're going to quit tomorrow. But as for today, keep moving forward. So here's what I'm hoping for us today, not brief time with you. It's Romans chapter 15, verse 13. May the hope of God fill you with all joy and peace in believing, so that by the power of the Spirit you may abound in hope. I hope you walk away today a little bit more hopeful, or a lot more hopeful, and that you are reminded that you're not alone, and the work that you are doing is being seen. Mark mentioned this earlier, but some of the lessons that I've observed in my life, I'm going to give you a few. By the way, I've had the opportunity to spend my career both in the business world and in the church world. Okay, by the way, sometimes I'm asked, what is the biggest difference between the business world and the church world? Honestly, there are more similarities than there are differences. I mean, when I left Chick-fil-A to help start a church, I got that question all the time. I'm like, you know what the biggest difference is that now as a pastor, I'm open on Sundays. At Chick-fil-A, I was closed on Sundays. You know the biggest difference. There's so many similarities, okay? But two questions that we really launched our church with are, what do you want to be known for? Mark mentioned this. What do you want to be known for? And what are you known for? That first question is, this question belongs to us as leaders. What do we want our nonprofit? What do we want our restaurant? What do we want our company to be known for? This is vision. And let me just push us a little bit on this. The answer to this question can't be a 7-paragraph mission statement that we came up with on a retreat 5 years ago that resides in filing cabinet and nobody can recite. Remember, what we're talking about here is vision. And vision is like a bucket of water. The more words in the bucket, the more the words fall out. Let me give you a few examples. Zappos, they sell shoes online. What do they want to be known for? It has nothing to do with shoes. They want to be known for delivering happiness. By the way, you need to start, nonprofit leaders, you need to start watching how for-profit leaders are trying to talk like nonprofit leaders. Because here's what they're trying to sell. They're trying to sell purpose. They're trying to sell purpose. By the way, nonprofit leaders, that's what we have, is purpose, right? IKEA. You're familiar with IKEA? They want to make everyday life better. That's what they want to be known for. Now, have you ever put IKEA furniture together? There we go. Okay, so that gets to the second question. What are you known for? Okay, no one here from IKEA, I hope. Okay, so the reason these two questions are important, this is our question as leaders. The second question is those that we serve. Like at Chick-fil-A, this would be our customers. And here's why these two questions are so important. I don't have time to get into all this, but let me just tell you why these two questions are important. This question right here is what Steve Jobs would say is your dent in the universe, right? This is your compelling, what makes you uniquely you. This is the response to whether you're living it out. When the answers to these two questions match, when what you want to be known for is exactly what you're known for, you create vision carriers and they start talking about your organization. It's that simple and it's that hard. And there's a lot more information in the book that Chester gave you, but I unpack how do you close the gap? Because in every organization, there's a gap. You have to be four groups of people, and all that's in the book. But I want to move to leadership moments because all of you are leaders. And here's the reality as leaders. As leaders, we'll never have enough time, but we do have leadership moments that are scattered through the course of every day. Like you'll never have enough time to do all that you want to do as a leader. But every single day, there are moments. And when we're aware of those moments, it helps us seize these leadership moments. So what do I mean by leadership moments? Well, I want to share with you the 4 questions that everyone is asking about your leadership. All right? And when you're aware of this, it allows you to walk into every day knowing where these leadership moments are. And I'm not saying that you have to answer all 4 of these questions, but I am suggesting that you answer at least one of them for the people that you work with or serve every single day. Okay? Because again, you'll never have enough time, but you'll have leadership moments if you're aware of them. And I want to share with you where I first saw this. I saw this as a little boy. And I want to show you who I learned this from. I learned this from the lady on the left, my mom. This is my mom. My mom is a huge sports fan. She loved Trey Young with the Atlanta Hawks. And so the Hawks 2 years ago were kind enough to arrange an opportunity for her to beat Trey before a basketball game, which was phenomenal. And then the National Basketball Association posted this picture on their social media feed. The Atlanta Hawks posted this on their social media feed. Trey Young posted this on his social media feed. And for 36 hours, my little mom went viral on social media. And I told my mom, "You've gone viral." To which my mom said, "Well, Jeffrey, I don't feel sick. I feel pretty good." It's a different kind of viral, Mom. Different kind of viral. And so, here's why I tell you the story. When we arrived at State Farm Arena 2 hours before the game to meet Trey, by the way, Trey was so wonderful to my mom. So wonderful. So we had to check in at security, and my mom did what I've seen her do all her life. She reverenced these moments. She goes up to the security guard and she says, "Thank you for protecting little Trey." That's what she called him. So obviously she was adorable, but the security guard just mesmerized by my mom. So he comes up to me and says, "Sir, can I escort your mom to make sure she gets back to the locker room okay?" Absolutely. I have a picture of the security guard at State Farm Arena escorting my mom. But as she's passing along, she noticed the Atlanta Hawks cheerleaders. So she pauses and says, "Can I talk to them?" She turns to the Atlanta Hawks cheerleaders and says, "Thank you for cheering for little Trey." They're like, "Who is this lady?" And so they said, "Sir, is this your mom?" I said, "Yes, it is." And they said, "Well, can we get a picture with your mom?" So I have a picture of the Atlanta Hawks cheerleaders with my mom. Then we're headed back to the locker room to go meet Trey, but apparently one of the Hawks owners sees this, and he comes up to me and says, "Can I introduce myself? Can I meet your mom?" I said, "Sure." So you have to understand the Brooklyn Nets are practicing. And this was when Kevin Durant was playing for the Nets at the time. My mom knows all the players. So the owner comes up, and so I said, "Mom, this is one of the," she can't hear very well, "Mom, this is one of the owners of the Hawks." So she takes his hand and she goes, "Oh, I just want you to know that I pray for you and the team and little Trey before every game." And you can tell the owner doesn't hear this a lot, you know? But then my mom, again, she knows all the players. She points to Kevin Durant, who's like right where Chester is. And she goes, "Sir, you need Kevin Durant on this team because Trey needs help." That was awkward. Okay, so now all the time these leadership moments aren't just so wonderful. Okay, so but the reason I say that is my mom stopped to notice people. I bet the reason, not only, yes, my mom, beautiful, adorable, but I think one of the reasons the security guard was mesmerized by my mom is I wonder if he is often ignored. I wonder if the reason the cheerleaders wanted to get a picture with my mom is that she was cheering them on because they're always cheering on others. And so that leads me to these 4 leadership questions that everybody's asking about you, that leads to the leadership moments. And they're simply this: do you see me? Do you hear me? Do you believe in me? And do I belong here? Do you see me? Do you hear me? Do you believe in me? And do I belong here? You will not have all the time that you'd like to have as a leader, but I'm telling you, there are leadership moments scattered through the course of every single day. And if you take one of these questions and answer them consistently, the compound interest of those leadership moments will be astounding. It's one of the things that Chester and the team was trying to say to you today. They said, "We see you. We just want you to know, we don't understand necessarily all the world that you do, but we just want you to know we see you." I'll give you a quick example of this, and then we'll fly through. When I first went to Chick-fil-A, there was the first president of Chick-fil-A was named Jimmy Collins. And one day, I walked into the restroom at Chick-fil-A, and the president of the company is standing at the counter, and he's burning documents. Anytime the president of a multi-billion-dollar company is burning documents, you need to be concerned, all right? Hashtag Enron. And so what I discovered, here's what Jimmy was doing. These papers that he was burning, they were actually sales reports of operators. And he was burning the individual pages, scooping up the ashes, putting a note, a little yellow sticky note on this, to the operator with this message: "Congratulations, your sales are on fire." And he sends it away. Now imagine you're the Chick-fil-A operator. You're at the back of the restaurant. That's because it's really small, small real estate back there. You get a letter from Chick-fil-A headquarters. Oh my goodness, and you open up the letter and ashes fall out of the envelope. What in the world is happening? And then you see it's a note from the president of Chick-fil-A, and he says, "My sales are on fire." You know what in that moment that Chick-fil-A operator felt? They felt seen. And here's what happens. Jimmy Collins could not do that for every single operator. So what we do is we talk ourselves out of it. Because if we can't do it for everybody, we just choose not to do it for anybody. Don't be like most people. That's why Andy Stanley, who I worked with for a number of years, he had this statement: "Do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. Do for one what you wish you could do for everyone." If you do that consistently, again, the compound interest of that is amazing. Well, I told you about my mom. Let me tell you a lesson I learned from my dad. My dad said this: "Be faithful in small things." That was paying attention. Like if you're a pastor, minister, nonprofit leader, or just a business leader, sometimes you might think, "Is it really nobody's watching us?" Somebody's always watching. Always watching. Be faithful in the small things. God's paying attention. Dan Caffey, who's the son of the founder of Chick-fil-A, he and I went to tour college a few years ago. And imagine you're a college administrator, and Dan Caffey from Chick-fil-A is coming to tour your college. You want to put out the red carpet and all that. So we're walking around, and suddenly we realize we've lost Dan Cathy. We've lost Dan Cathy, like he was the president of Chick-fil-A at the time now. And so we look, and Dan's way over there. And guess what Dan's doing? He's picking up trash. So the president of the university is just horrified. So they run over and go, oh, Mr. Cathy, you don't have to do this. We have people who pick up the trash here. And Dan goes, oh, no, you don't understand. This is my Father's world, and it's my honor to help keep it clean. So at that point, we all started looking for trash. But my point is be faithful in those small things. Here's the thing. You already know, you already do this. You wouldn't be here if you're not faithful in small things. I just want to encourage you, God's paying attention. You know this. You probably preached about it on Sunday. I get all that. But sometimes, as Mark Twain said, sometimes we don't need new information. Sometimes we just need to be reminded of what we already know. Be faithful in the small things. God's paying attention. I had this statement from John. Actually, you're going to get to hear from John in this community next month. This was my first talk after COVID. John and I were in West Palm Beach. I was speaking after him, and he said this statement that I've never forgotten, and I alluded to it earlier, but I wanted to share it with you. He said this: I never had a clear vision. I just kept moving forward. I know that I don't have a clear vision because I'm a mere mortal. You're John, 36 million books sold master. You never had a clear vision? And he said, well, I knew that I was called to train leaders. I just didn't know how to do that. But you know what I did? I just kept moving forward. So, as you move toward Christmas, what is just one step? And I would tell you today, you took one step forward by being here today. So, I'll just give you the rest of the afternoon off, okay? So you've already done that. But tomorrow, how can you keep making one step forward? Now, I want to share, since most of you are nonprofit leaders, I wanted to share with you something I've learned in raising money. We all have to raise money. I've often been asked this question, Jeff, what happens when our vision outpaces our resources? If our future vision outpaces our current resources. Here's my first response to that. If your future vision is currently outpacing your present resources, congratulations, you're on the right track. Because the opposite is actually worse. When resources outpace your vision, the warning light on the dashboard is on. Because where there is no vision, the people perish. So I'm going to give you a question that I've asked. This helps me raise money. I mean, yeah, you got to be on your knees, you got to pray. But this question, I've asked this question, and I wasn't a natural fundraiser, but I had to raise money for 4 buildings over the last, which is where this gray hair comes from. Okay, so, but I got better at it, and I got more bold by asking this one question. So I would sit down in coffee shops or meetings like this, and say, hey, here's what we're trying to do in the Atlanta area. Here's our vision. Here's the people we're going to reach. Here's what we're going to do. And so knowing that, here's my question. Will you help me? Will you help me? And then here's what you have to do. You have to pause and let the awkward silence fill the coffee shop with you. And I would get one of 3 answers. Yes, no, or I'll pray about it, which is also no. But that's okay. Because it's my responsibility to provide the question. It's their responsibility to provide the answer. And what I've had to learn in raising money is that if I'm not careful, I will answer for someone before I even ask them. Because here's what I'll go, they're not going to do this. There's not a chance they're going to do this. Well, I'm 1,000% right if I don't ask them. And I've been shocked at how many people have said yes, but I didn't think we were going to say yes. All right, so will you help me? Now, to close, I want to talk about a principle here that is really, really important. And the good news is I didn't come up with this. This has been around for thousands of years. This is what I call the influence principle, and I'll explain that. And it's this verse. Above all else, guard your heart. above all else, guard your heart for everything. Pretty important word right here, what do you think? Not some things, not most of the time. Everything you do flows out. This is the most important leadership and influence principle. And I'm going to close by talking about 3 trends of the heart. All right, 3. There's probably more than 3, but we need to get to lunch, so I want to give you 3. Okay, and we'll heads up. 2 of these 3 are a little negative. All right, but hang with me. Hang with me. All right, here's 3 leadership trends I'm going to talk of from the heart. Bitter, brittle, or better. Have you ever been around a bitter leader? Isn't it a joy to be around them, right? Have you ever been around a brittle leader? What do I even mean by bitter leader and brittle leader and better leader? Here's why this is important. If I am a bitter leader, I'm leading out of the heart. Because everything I do flows out of the heart. So what do I mean by bitter, brittle, and better? Well, bitter is easily cynical. Have you ever been around a bitter leader and you give them some great news, and then in about 11.2 seconds they turn it around and they say, oh yeah, I've seen where this is going. Let me tell you, they always do it this way. And they start talking in they, right? Cynicism, here's why this is important from a leadership standpoint. Cynicism wrecks cultures. It's devastating. Bitter is easily cynical. Brittle is easily discouraged. You give a little bit of feedback and it's like a sledgehammer. And then better is easily inspired. So let me talk to you a little bit about this. Bitter. The root of cynicism is resentment. And the soil of resentment is unprocessed grief. So if there's a team member or someone in your church or your organization and there's grief and they've not processed that, unprocessed grief will grow and it grows out. And if they're on your team, you have to be really aware of this. Right? And I don't have time to talk. You all are amazing. You know how to do this. I'm just saying, this is why this is so important from a church standpoint, from a nonprofit standpoint. We're talking about culture. And what's happening within the team is what you're exporting to the community. The next one is brittle. When a leader is brittle, the slightest criticism can feel like a sledgehammer. And what do I mean by that? Well, so I was with some Chick-fil-A operators, the New Orleans market last month, and I was going through this with them. And I get to the brittle point, and one of the operators says out loud, oh, that's why he quit. And I'm like, okay, well, you interrupted my talk. Tell me more. What do you mean by that? He goes, well, Saturday night, I was driving by the restaurant, and I decided to go in and go to the back of the restaurant. And I noticed something in the back of the restaurant that I didn't really like. So I mentioned it to the team member. I think we could do this better. And so I talked to him about that, showed him how to do it better, and then I left. On Monday, I get a call from one of my leadership team members, and they said, what did you do? Because this person quit. And he said, oh, I didn't really say anything. I just said, I think we can do this better. And so his team leader said, well, what you don't understand is that where they are, what was going on, you hit them, you approach them with this criticism, and those words hit their heart and it crushed them and they quit. All right? And here's what that operator said. It's on me to know how everyone is doing so that I can approach them in the right way. Okay? So bitter, brittle, and better is this one. Better is easily inspired because there's a belief that tomorrow will be better than today. The root of better is hope. And that's what we wanted you to experience today, just for a little bit. You're going to get a great lunch, and we just want you to walk away a little more hopeful. Because everything you do out of your heart, how you lead is coming out of your heart. Now, you may say, okay, Big Shot, bitter, brittle, and better. How do you know? Do you have any data to back this up? Like, how do you know? Show us some data. I didn't bring data today. You know what I brought with me? Real life experience. Because guess what? Bitter, brittle, better. I've been all 3 of these. You're not looking at a guy that's just had an easy life. I've been bitter. I've I've been brittle. I'll probably trend toward more brittle than bitter. But fortunately for me, I've had people in my life to go, oh, sorry, it's okay to get those seasons. We're not letting you stay there. We're going to move you toward better. So don't, you know this, but don't do this work alone. When I was in a season of brittle, probably more bitter 2 years ago, it's a long story, but I was with a friend. We were traveling to Toronto. We were speaking at a leadership conference, and I said, man, I'm just not in a good spot right now. I just need to go for a run in the morning. Would you go running with me? And he said, absolutely. So he calls me when we get to the room, and he goes, hey, I just noticed I'm packing, but I didn't bring my running shoes. And I said, oh, that's okay, man. I'll go run it by myself. And he goes, oh, no, I'm still going to go running with you. I'm just going to run in my dress shoes. So when I show up tomorrow morning in my dress shoes, I just don't want you to think I've lost my mind, okay? But I'm still going to run in my dress shoes. And I have a picture 10 years ago that I'm going to show you later of Shane Benson in his dress shoes running in Toronto. My point is you need to have people who are willing to run in their dress shoes with you in a season of bitterness and brittleness, right? And I want to give you this question, and then I'll invite Mark back up. This question, I was reading a book, and it's called a book about the future self. There's so many biblical principles in this book, but I came up, as I was thinking about this, I came up with this question that has really helped me this year, because I mentioned that this is a big year because I have zero attached to my age. But this year my mom passed away. She was in a car wreck in March and passed away on Good Friday. And I was scheduled, pastors, you'll know this. You're scheduled to preach at these things. You're honored to do that, right? And I knew my mom wasn't doing well, and I was going to. A friend of mine had asked me months ago to speak at this Good Friday business prayer breakfast thing, and so my wife Wendy calls me and she said, "Hey, you're done speaking, right? Because I just want to let you know your mom passed away." I'm like, no, actually, I'm about to be introduced together, right? But you're like, hey, look, this is why we talk about this in these moments, right? And then I ended up also preached Sunday morning for Easter. And those two messages were the first time both my parents had seen me preach from heaven. Right? So I'm like, this better be good. This better be good. But there's a question that I really, as my mom was slowly passing away, that as I was thinking about this, it really helped me. And I'll give you an example. So, if you've ever cared for an aging parent, you're having to make a lot of decisions. Insurance, hospice, all this kind of stuff. And it's great. It's wonderful. In terms of being able to care for your parents. But this particular day, my mom, as I mentioned, she's a sports fan, she wanted me to sit down and watch the Braves and Yankees spring training game there. And I've got hospice here, and they've been amazing. They got to figure out insurance and medicine, and when to give them all medicine, and all this kind of stuff. And Mom's like, Jeff, the Braves and Yankees are on. And I'm like, I love the Braves. I used to work for the Braves, but I don't really watch spring training because you don't even know any of the players. So I'm like, okay, Mom. And then this question that I want to leave you with today. This is the question I want to leave you with. The question is this: how would I feel, and what would I do if the me 10 years from now could come back and live my life for the rest of the day? So, making these decisions, and Mom's saying, Jeffrey, come over and watch, spring training game with me. And I'm like, what would myself 10 years from now tell me about this moment? I mean, you've probably been asked this question. What would you tell yourself 10 years ago? That's probably a helpful question. I think it's actually more helpful to go in the other direction. And you go, what would my future self 10 years from now tell me about what I get to do today? So you know what I did? I told the hospice nurse, you're amazing. I need to fill these forms out later. I put my phone on silent because work's calling me. I went over and I sat and watched 5 innings of spring training baseball with my mom that I'll never get to do. So you're heading into Christmas. And trust me, I understand, I understand the heck of the pace of this. But 10 years from now, your future self will go, oh my goodness, I would love to be able to do that again. And when we understand that, we understand what a gift life is. We understand that. We understand what a gift today is. And you know this. You're not promised tomorrow. So here's what I'm going to encourage you. I'm not going to ask you to ask you this question tomorrow. I'm not going to ask you to ask this question for the rest of the month. I'm only going to ask you to ask this question for the rest of the day. And just to see the filter it puts on from 1 o'clock to where you go tonight. So with that, be encouraged. Keep moving forward. And thanks for being here for others. Mark.
We'd all love to spend more time with you. Thank you again, Chester and Roberts. This book, The Principles, and you just heard about it here. And also, if you want, I'm going to show you something. Turn in your book, page 244. That sounds like a song service. Turn in your page. Are you there? You're page 244? Look at the end of the second paragraph. You see that number? You see it? Yeah, it's Jeff's number. He put his phone number in the book. So you give him a call. So Jeff, we need to talk to you about something. I think that's pretty remarkable. That's not just a talk that he gave to us. It's how he's chosen to live his life. In this room, there are multiple examples of being for one another. You'll see also at your table this card about the Ocala Leadership Conference that's coming next month. For over a decade, we've had John Maxwell here in Ocala virtually with a Live to Lead simulcast. But we believed that it was time to bring John personally to Ocala. And so on January 30th, Friday, January 30th, we're bringing John Maxwell. We were trying to find a venue, and we kept running out of space. WEC promised that they would be done, but they're not done with their new convention center. And then again, for Meadowbrook Church, Pastor Tim Gilligan and his team, they said, hey, listen, we're for our community. Bring it here. Let's host it there. So we'll be at Meadowbrook, world-class facilities, all the speakers on the back. But to take it one step level higher is on this brochure, Roberts, because they're for us. They're giving all of us a 40% discount, a true $100 off on you coming, bringing your team, as many you want to bring for that day, to actually watch them grow. I mean, if what you just felt in this room kind of inspired you, did something inside of you, I want you to think about 9 hours of that. Because Jeff's boss is the guy who's speaking. Jeff's on the John Maxwell team. He knows John personally. And John Gordon, you can see the list, Ryan Leake. I mean, it really will be a world-class event. So thank you, Pastor Tim, for opening up Meadowbrook, Pastor Sean and the team. We really appreciate it. When Mike said we couldn't come because they didn't have space, we thought about putting in the tent. It wouldn't have been the same being in a tent. And so being in Meadowbrook will be phenomenal. And then, one more example of making this kind of event. This kind of event, right? These are world-class speakers. It doesn't just happen. And so we have the Advent Health Group chaplains that are here today. And they are the presenting sponsors. In other words, they wrote the check so that we as a community could move from dreaming about having an event like this to actually having an event. Without Advent, this doesn't happen. With Advent, you work so So Pastor Greg's going to come and pray over our chaplain Greg as we come and pray over our meal. Think about this. Chaplain Greg and his team, they have 2,200 employees that they care for, serve, and their entire families. And then on any given day, there's 400 patients that they're caring for. Not just 400 patients, but 400 families and extended families. And you all know the partnership of Advent in our community, how they step into a hospital room and care for the people who attend our church. It's a challenge trying to visit everybody, getting there on time. Some of the harshest criticism often is around hospital care, us not getting there or being there later than we should have. We got in, we had to leave. But Chaplain, because you and your team, you stand in the gap in the care sometimes because we're doing other things, you and your team that you all do, it makes all of our lives better because you're for us. So, thank you.
Yeah, the entire chaplain team is here. We have 6 chaplains over at Advent Health. Thank you for referencing the care that goes on there. And the care would only be partial care if we were only doing it. We partner with you all in this faith community to bring whole person care. It can't happen just by a hospital. It has to happen by the community. So thank you. Thank you, Chester, for making this possible today. Jeff, I just must say thank you for leading into this space with us. What a tremendous blessing. I will say this little caveat, that when you gave everybody the afternoon off, all of my chaplains go, yes! And so I simply applied one of the principles, nope. We're going to move forward. We're going to move forward back to the campus. And on that 0 that's next to your age right now, about 10 years it's going to sell you out. You're going to be a little older. Let's pray. Gracious God, we thank you for bringing us together today in this space, in this place of compassion and service. Robert Funeral Home has been a tremendous part of this community in creating those spaces for families and people to stay connected, to be supported. And we thank you for always using them in that way. So we pause to honor our pastors and ministry leaders, faith leaders who are here today, who faithfully care for our community. Thank you that we can bring whole person care to Marion County and beyond. The presence, the prayers, the partnership that bring healing and hope where it is needed most as we connect with people at the point of their greatest need. Bless our food today. Thank you again for this opportunity. In your name. Amen.
Okay, so lunch is through these double doors right over here. And then also, if you'd like to have your book signed by Jeff, you can come down and see him. He would enjoy signing. Okay?